In this video, we're going to talk about naming esters. So an ester functional group is going to be an oxygen that is double bonded to a carbon. That carbon is then bonded to either a carbon or a hydrogen, and then an oxygen, and then more carbons. So that's what an ether is, or what an ester is. I keep messing those two up. Ester. So let's start with our first example. How do we name this compound? So you want to divide it up into two sections. You want to have the carbonyl and the oxygen on one section, and everything to the other side of it. And then on the other section, you want the carbons that are attached to the oxygen group. So now you have two sections. On the right side, you have 1, 2, 3 carbons. So that's propyl. On the left side, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 carbons, and that's associated with butane. But since you have the ester functional groups, instead of calling it butane, you're going to call it butanoate. And to put it together, you're going to say propyl, and you're going to put a space and put butanoate. And that's how you name that compound. Now, how do we name this one? So on this it's not always going to be on the right side, but the side next to that single oxygen, you're going to have 1 carbon, so that's methyl, and then on the side with the 2 oxygens, you're going to have 2 carbons, that's called ethanoate. So putting it together, it's going to be methyl ethanoate. Now, let's go through an example where we have this. So again, you want to divide it up into one section that has both oxygens, and another section where you have the carbons that are on the side. Here you can see we have 3 carbons, that's called propyl, and then we have on the side with the oxygens we have 1 carbon, and that's called, usually even be called methane, but we're going to call it methanoate because of the ester function group. So to put it together, it's going to be propyl methanoate. And the O8 part is always going to be on the section where you're going to have the 2 oxygens. And the alkyl part, the YL, it's going to be on the part where you don't have any oxygens. So now let's talk about this one. You can see that on the left we have a benzene ring attached. Now whenever you have a benzene ring as a substituent, it's always going to be called phenyl. So this is phenyl, and I could draw it on the red because I've usually drawn that side red. So let's go with red. The phenyl is the substituent, and then the main chain name, it's going to be in here. Notice that we don't have just a benzene ring, we also have benzene ring plus an extra carbon. So the benzene ring has 6 carbons. We have 1 extra here. If you add them up, that's going to be 7. Whenever you have a benzene ring with 1 extra carbon, that's going to be called a benzyl. But this is a benzyl that is also attached to an ester functional group. So to put them together, it's going to be called benzoate. And so the name of this compound is going to be phenylbenzoate. So now how do we name this compound? As you can see, on the side with no oxygens, we have 3 carbons, so that's propyl. On the side with the ester functional group, we have a benzene ring and an extra carbon. A benzene ring and an extra carbon is called benzyl, and when you have the ester, it's going to be called benzoate. So we're going to have propyl benzoate. Now that's part 1 of the naming ester series. Come back next week for part 2.